Hey everyone, this is Blair Reynolds with On the Beam. We have Jason Hold back with us once again. Today we're going to talk about your business and making your business run as effectively and efficiently as possible. And he's the guy to ask on this because he has two great companies. One is called Balanced Edge, the other is Practical Business Consulting. So Jason, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good to be here.
Good to have you here. Let's dive right in.
Okay.
So we were talking before the camera started rolling about how you work with companies and how that process can, obviously you're working with it in a consulting form, but you're also helping companies understand how to think a little bit differently about their own business. So can you step into that and give us some understanding?
Yeah. Well, it's rare that a company calls us that is highly performing and everything is perfect.
Yeah.
So, right?
Not much motivation.
It's kind of like when you call the fire department, you know, usually something is on fire. So with us, when we get a call, it's usually somebody who is in crisis, a business is in crisis in one area or another, and it may be that they're stuck and they can't figure out why.
Yeah.
Or it may be that there's a problem and they can't identify where the actual problem is, where the root of the problem is. What sometimes appears to be isn't necessarily true.
Yeah.
I often tell groups that I lead out, I say, you know, trust beyond what your eyes can see. Look beyond what your eyes can see, because in life and in business, there's so much more that can be seen beyond. Like right now, I'm looking past the camera and my eyes can't see beyond the doors and the walls and everything else, but there's still things beyond it, right?
That are affecting us.
That are affecting us. And so when we come on board, we do a very thorough assessment. We want to know, is this the right client for us? Because if I help a client that isn't our ideal client, I'm really not helping them and I'm not helping us.
Yeah.
It's a lose-lose. And so if I go into a situation where I'm just chasing the dollar and I think, well, it'll be a quick buck, it's doomed for failure. It's got to be deeper than that. It has to be my ideal client, my right client. And when I meet with these folks, whether it's through consulting or through a business negotiation or an acquisition as we're acquiring a company, we're looking through and we're identifying who are they, who were they led by, what type of leader is that person, what type of childhood did the leader have. I want to know the roots, because it's great to see the tree. I love to actually see the roots, right? And so I want to get to the bottom of what really makes that company tick and what really makes the people tick. And through that, I apply what's known as the 4 C's. And the 4 C's would be curiosity. So I ask lots of questions. I look beyond what my eyes can see. I apply creativity, and I look and I try to connect dots that this person didn't even know existed. And then I decide, am I willing to commit to this? Is this something that I can commit to? And is the team committed to the success, to actually get to where they say they want to go? Because sometimes there's two different stories, right? And the last C is compassion. So you have curiosity, creativity, commitment, myself and the team, and compassion. And the compassion part really comes in the crafting of the deal. Because a lot of these folks are coming and they're not in necessarily a position of great strength. A lot of times they're calling 911 and they're going, I need some business ninjas over here right now because something's going on. That is not the time to take advantage of the situation, because again, if you do that, then by taking advantage of a situation, you're not creating a win-win, which then everything is doomed for failure. So I strongly believe it's got to be a win-win, and that compassion has to come out. It has to be in the deal. It has to be in everything that you do, because at the end of the day, it's still people to people. And as long as we're the rulers of the earth, that's not going to change. You can apply all the technology, all the gadgets, all the tools you want, and it's still going to be people to people. Right? And that's what really drives the engine. So that's where we go in. The assessment process is very thorough. It's very documented. We look at all the different areas. all the major areas of a business, from the marketing and branding to the entity formation, going all the way back to the beginning, to who's the team, who's the leadership, who are the people in the trenches, right, and talking with them. Really getting a full holistic picture as to what's going on with that company.
Yeah, I like that idea. And I don't know if I've ever thought about this before, but a business isn't just in the four walls of the business.
Right.
You bring everything to it. You bring your, like you said, your childhood, you bring your past, you bring your relationships that are going on outside, you bring your former experiences.
That's right.
But there are all these things that are being brought to the table that usually are taboo. Usually it's like, hey, this is our boundary. This is business time. This is your other and personal and psychology time. So I think it's fascinating that that's part of your business model.
Yeah.
So I've got a question for you. It's when you go into these businesses, I would have to believe that you're going to see the same problems over and over in a lot of cases.
Okay.
Can you name one or two of those problems and a way or two that we might be able to solve them?
Okay. Depending on who's watching this right now, for those leaders who are watching this right now, this answer may not be your favorite answer, and that is usually it's us. Usually we are our own problem. We're in our own way. We're preventing our own success. We are complaining about the people around us, how they're underperforming, they're not following policy, and it usually, unfortunately, falls back to us as the leader. Because even as an employee or a team member who is quote unquote not following policy, what I often find is there's really no policy at all. When you ask for written policy, there is no written policy, or it's vaguely interpreted, and usually by the leader who has not provided the proper training to their employees so that they clearly understand and know what to expect and know how to apply the policy in a format that everybody is in agreement to.
Yeah.
And so you end up with the head honcho, the boss, coming in, and depending upon the day, their mood, how they woke up in the morning, depends on how that policy is interpreted and applied, and it may change the next day. That's a great way to bring a team, a business, into chaos. And for them then, out of survival, they have to interpret the policies on their own. And so they get interpreted according to what is in the best interest of that person at that time, according to what they believe is the best application. That's not a good way to run a business. So proper training, ongoing training, taking that policy manual and not putting it in a drawer and 3 years later pulling it out and dusting it off, actually following it, adjusting it, making changes as they need to be made. But that is the blueprint for the company moving forward. So everybody is clear on the plan.
Yeah, I have to admit I'm entertained because the very person that would hire you is typically the person that you're talking to right now.
That's right.
And you're saying, hey, essentially those people that are going to hire my services and my business services, I'm talking to you. But the truth is the buck does stop here.
Right.
I mean, the buck stops with the leader, and they're responsible for making sure that their team works, that their business works.
That's right.
And I find it very interesting as well that you live in a high stakes world. So adventure consulting is something where you're in a life and death situation, or at least you're training people for life and death situations in case that happens, and you're working with them in those scenarios. So little things matter. You know, these little differences, these little nuances that a lot of times in businesses we take for granted because we're like, meh, it's day to day. It's just a part of how our business runs. They matter, and they matter in the day-to-day, but it doesn't feel like it. The stakes aren't high enough to show the real symptoms of not having that kind of an elegant solution.
That's right.
So we've talked about the problem side.
Yes.
Let's talk about the excelling companies.
Okay.
So the companies that you just see are screaming, you come into, or at least you've been a part of, that they are doing things right. What are some of the company cultures or characteristics that you see commonly amongst these companies?
I'm smiling because I just met with a company. I can't say the name, but it's under an NDA. But they're a very thriving company. They're in the they're in the $100 million threshold for revenue, and they're doing very well. And the leader of this company, we'll call him. Give me a name.
Greg.
Greg.
Greg is a great leader.
So Greg is a great leader. So Greg is this dynamic leader. he leads with few words. Kind of like going back to my grandfather when we were talking about a man of few words and real strategic words. And Greg is great with that.
Yeah.
And he understands the importance of words. He also understands how to really lead. I call him a leader's leader. So when I met with him, I was very, very impressed with how his team is performing. And in a lot of ways, he's almost a celebrity. And people love him. People would jump in front of a bus to save this guy, to save their own boss.
Yeah.
That's the level of affinity that people have for this guy. And as a result, they work and they work and they work and they drive results, and they're doing really well. So in watching, it was very clear what he was doing. He has a strategy, as you'd expect. And one of his key strategies is he doesn't solve other people's problems.
Great point.
All right. So he allows the people, he hires the best, and then he provides the training, or his team provides the training, and they do what they're hired to do.
Yeah.
And he gets out of the way. And when things come up, he expects people to come with ideas for solutions or solutions rather than knock, 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 hey, got a minute?
Yeah.
Right? I got this problem. That is like the slippery slope for the CEO, and it'll kill your day every time. The whole got a minute syndrome, and everybody's coming with problems, and that boss or that CEO is trying to solve everybody's problems. As a result, he becomes the go-to guy for everybody, because now he is setting up a dynamic where everybody relies on him. Well, this guy, Greg, nobody really needs Greg, because they're empowered to do what they do best, which is work within their scope, solve their own problems, and report to the next chain of command. When it gets to Steve, it's good.
It's solved.
It's solved.
Yeah. The reason that that's so effective, at least I would think so, is when people step in to help their employees, because they know the business, they probably started the business, or they're a big part of building it. They think that they're doing them a favor. They think, oh, I'm going to solve this problem, and I'm going to solve this problem over here. But it drains the person that's in head, whoever the leader is, so they're exhausted and they're probably frustrating. But the biggest thing that it does is it disempowers the employee.
That's right.
It actually teaches the employee that they're not competent to do their job and solve their own problems. So it's this beautifully empowering situation where the leader gives his time and his energy back, and the employee actually learns what it's like and what it takes to be a really good leader.
It's the difference between them wanting to kill you when
Absolutely.
you solve their problems compared to them willing to jump in front of a bus for you.
Yeah.
You know, when you're allowing them to come to their own solution. So you're absolutely right. Nice.
Jason, I think that's a great place to stop. I think that's one of those that we need to step back and say, hey, what are we doing and how are we doing this in our own business?
Yeah.
And I think you brought up a number of good points. It's practicalbusinessconsulting.com.
Yep,
If I'm
sure is.
saying it. Well,
Yeah.
Jason, it's our pleasure.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here.
Pleasure.